Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Interfaith Community Sanctuary. Thank you, Deb, for lighting our candles and our Divine Feminine altar there. We appreciate that. Welcome this morning to Interfaith Community Sanctuary, to fourth Sunday worship, where I think you know me. I'm Sally Jo Gilbert de Vargas, co-minister here, and I've invited our congregant Zach Brown to share with us today and to help us focus on and inquire about our theme for the month, our spiritual discernment. You have the whole year on the back of your program there, and the month of February, which this is the final Sunday in February, and we're working on Sanctuary for the Divine is our topic, in the broader topic of an invitation to create sanctuary in community. So welcome, and thank you for joining us and participating in this service today. So I think we're going to begin this morning with Chris helping us to invite our ancestors and honor our first peoples. And you can use this if you want, or you can use that one.
Okay, sure. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the folks online. I'd like to do as I've done, and I'm proud to say many times before, and I'm here again, to honor our ancestors, and also to acknowledge the sacrifices of the first peoples that lived on this land. Our ancestors can be people not just we're physically related to. It can be lots of different folks who've influenced us to this point. It can be many different kinds of individuals. And I'd like to try to gather those memories, and if we think about who has influenced us, I see some longtime members here and family. It's a beautiful day for that, and so just think in your heart, in your head, of who has brought you to this place, who has helped you and guided you on your path, whether they trod these boards or were in other parts of your life. Just take a few moments to think about those ancestors. Let's bring them into this space. Okay, and blessed be, we welcome all of our ancestors. We welcome all faiths, all spiritual traditions. I'm been a proud member of this group for a long time, and I'm glad to be able to do that today. I'd also like to, at this time this year, as I've done this before, I'd also like to think about our descendants. Now, that just doesn't mean, again, family that may have our blood. I believe that all people are family. Every one of us has folks that we are influencing in the way that we've been influenced, and I hope that we can influence those folks in a positive way and be able to help them on their path in the way that we've been helped. So maybe we could think of some other folks. I'm a child care worker, and I've got many kids that I work with every day, and I'm thinking of them, and there may be other folks in your life who, whether you're related to them or not by blood, you may still consider them family and your descendants. So let's think about those folks just briefly. May all be blessed and welcome here, and I'm again glad to see all of you. I'd like to honor and acknowledge that on this land that we now call Ballard and Seattle, and the Interfaith Community Sanctuary, originally it was inhabited for many centuries by native folks who sacrificed, honored the land for their peoples. They may have hunted, fished, done other positive activities to hold this land sacred, and we want to take that seriously and acknowledge that the Coast Salish people were the first people come to this land. There were many different names in that Coast Salish group. One I'd like to call attention to is the Duwamish. The Duwamish were the people of Chief Sealth and the community that surrounded this area. And like many Native folks, they held the plants and the animal life and the land itself sacred and didn't think of it as a place that someone could necessarily own or have as just for them. So when our settlers came to this country, they welcomed us with open arms and greeted us and helped the European and the East Coast settlers to have what they hoped was a happy life. But I'd like to acknowledge that this land was unceded by those Coast Salish people, and that if you'd like to learn more, as I've mentioned before, you could look at realrentduwamish.org. We're proud contributors to the struggle that the Duwamish has to be acknowledged in the U.S. government as a tribe. I'm not sure why, when the Muckleshoot and other tribes were acknowledged, that the Duwamish were left out of that discussion. We're seeing other folks, my Ukrainian brothers and sisters, also being left out of discussions. I hope that all people can be supportive of determining their futures, and I hope that if you would like to learn more about the Duwamish and the Coast Salish people, you could look at the longhouse that's on East Marginal Way down near Harbor Island. So I'd like to do one more thing, sort of a prayer that our spiritual sister, Succinctly Laurel Boucher, brought to us. If you can put your hand on your heart and gather all of what it means for you and your life to be human. We're going to gather all that together and lift all that to the Creator, offer it as a gift to them. They may acknowledge that and put a gift in our hand, and we can return that to our hearts and hope to find joy and peace in that giving and exchange. As I lift up my hand, I'd like to say the sacred word, oh. So again, one more time, take a breath. Think of all that's brought you here today, all the different experiences, whether they were positive, negative, joys, sorrows. One last deep breath. And we raise our hand. Oh! Blessed be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Beautiful offering. I would like to take a moment now and make an offering for the Divine Feminine, which we do every Sunday as well. And we have our little altar here that we set aside just as a way of remembering to include not only in our service, but in ourselves. We each have a divine masculine and a divine feminine, or a divine nothing and no gender. And we tend to use our language more, at least historically, in recent memory. The language around God tends to be more masculine in nature and create an image in our mind. And so we like to kind of remind ourselves and each other that we also have a divine feminine. It's like a yin and a yang in the Chinese system. They're opposing energies that are very complementary, and it requires both energies to be in balance in order to be a balanced human being. So I was looking and found a poem that I'd like to read by a poet named Lauren Brantz. I thought it was particularly relevant to our time today in this country. In a time of hate, love is an act of resistance. In a time of fear, faith is an act of resistance. In a time of misinformation, education is an act of resistance. In a time of poor leadership, community is an act of resistance. In a time like this, joy is an act of resistance. Resist, resist, resist. Amen. And without much ado, I would like to introduce I'm not going to call Zach a guest speaker because he's a member of our community and a very valued member. And I'm introducing him very briefly because he'll introduce himself through his words today. But I do want to say, I mean, most of you here, probably all of you here know Zach somewhat. And I met Zach many years ago when he first walked in the door. I don't remember exactly which year it was. 2015. Okay, that was right after I had become a Shirag in the community, and I've seen Zach be such an active member of this community in such a quiet way. Zach is the kind of person who kind of melts into the background, and Deb even more so. The two of them, they're just always there being helpful, but very, very subtle and quiet about it, which is something very unlike me. I'll be honest. I'm like out there, you know. Anyway, but I appreciate my opposites. So thank you. And I do want to say that Zach has been involved in projects, deeply involved in projects related to this sanctuary that many of you may not know, helping us write grants to get our building fixed up, like when we got a new roof in our building, and when we've used our funds from our granting organizations. What's the name of that organ? Oh yeah, For Culture, a local organization, and Zach was instrumental, absolutely fundamental in helping us write the different grants to get that money to help us. And he also has helped tremendously in the flooding and the water problems that we've had over the past few years. And that's the kind of thing Zach does behind the scenes on the weekdays when you and I aren't here and the basement is flooding and the pipes are overflowing or whatever. Zach is here and Deb is by his side to help and make sure that our sanctuary stays secure. And we really, really appreciate that. He also, being a water engineer, has helped over in the Uganda project, the United Village project that Gretchen talked about on the fourth Sunday of January. Zach has given a lot of major scientific advice and guidance in helping them in the orphans project in the school and the interfaith community they have there to have water and sewer available, clean water and clean sewer to bathrooms for their children and all the members of their community. Thousands of children go there every day, and Zach has been instrumental in making that possible, all through correspondence. You've never been to Uganda yet, right? Not yet. I say yet because I'm sure they'll get him there sooner or later. All this kind of work that's Zach. He works behind the scenes constantly to better this world and better our community. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and let's listen because he has some great spiritual practices that he's going to share with us.
Thank you. That was more than I was expecting. Yeah. So anyways, I'm Zach. Debbie and I have been around for 10 years, a little over 10 years now, 10 years and a month to be precise. But I'm happy to see everybody. Some of you I've known for the whole time. First things first, I'm not a teacher. I'm a seeker. I learn from all of you, just like you all probably have learned a little bit here and there from me and everybody else as well. 10 years ago, Debbie and I, 10 and a half years, almost 10 and 3/4 years ago now, Debbie and I got married. We were in Texas at the time. We didn't really want to be in Texas anymore. It was a little different than we wanted to be. It's way different now. So we decided she's originally from California. We decided we wanted to be in the West Coast, and we started throwing a net. I was a design engineer at the time, working for private industry, lots of land development and water and sewer stuff like what's going on in Uganda, roads and things like that, making rich people more money. Didn't want to do that anymore. I learned a lot. I did some cool stuff, but I wanted to flip over to the public side of things and do environmental engineering, basically. And so, threw a big wide net on the West Coast, specifically Oregon and Washington. We originally thought we were going to go to Oregon, but quickly found out that there was more job opportunities for me in Washington. And so here we are. We got a job up in Everett doing river engineering for Snohomish County for about 3.5 years. Now I work for the city of Everett doing large-scale construction, large-scale engineering stuff for their public works people, our public works division. But that's how we got here. I was originally from Texas, born and raised. Debbie kind of moved a little bit around the country, but now after 10 years, this is basically home. You guys are family. We don't really have a whole lot of family real close, kind of spread out across the country. But anyways, we found ICS early. We were lucky. We never felt the Seattle freeze. People talk about that stuff. We're not super outgoing. I'm more outgoing than Debbie is, but we're not too loud, gregarious folks that just talk to everybody. But we talk about it often that we feel pretty lucky that we found ICS and we found various folks that are maybe not necessarily intimately linked with ICS, but somehow or another connected. And so we never felt the freeze of Seattle. We never felt any of that. We just became somehow or another plugged in, and here we are. So thanks for asking me to do this. When you asked about 6 weeks ago, I was like, what the heck am I gonna say? But I was talking to Debbie about it yesterday a little bit. We had a 7-hour plane trip yesterday, so we had lots of time to talk. But I was talking about, whenever you get asked to tell what you believe or what you know, it kind of makes you kind of ask yourself and scratch your head a little bit and scratch your history a little bit, like, what actually do I know? What do I think? And so thanks for that, because it kind of makes you go a little bit deeper in your thoughts and in your beliefs. So today, creating sanctuary for the divine. That's huge. That's a big topic. Sanctuary itself is a hard to define topic. I think it's pretty unique to everybody's definition. Will be relatively unique to themselves, and then divinity, even more so. I think divinity is probably the same amount of definitions for divinity as there are people on the planet. Honestly, I think every one of us will have a different definition. But before I go there, just real quick, I grew up in a evangelical Christian community. My parents were Baptist, raised me in a Baptist community. My mom has passed away, but my dad is still around. He's still active in the Baptist community. Both my sisters, all my extended family in Texas. I'm not a Baptist, but that's where I was raised. Whenever I was a teenager, I started having these questions of like, why is this the right thing? Why is everybody else wrong? Like, how come I got this, somehow punch some magic ticket and I can go to heaven? Like, I started having those kind of questions. That was early on in my teen years. Fast forward a few years, and I was going through a particularly rough time in my life, and I went to a men's retreat for about 3 or 4 days with, 500 other guys that I didn't even know. And they said a whole lot of things. This was the evangelical organization that put it on. They said a lot of things, and I'm sure they were all good, but what I really remembered was something that now I can look back almost 20 years, look back and see that it was an inflection point. And what it was, it's on my fridge still today. This guy, his name was Pastor Tom Duchel. He's an evangelical pastor in Zimbabwe. He said, "The kingdom of God is a disposition and not a destination." And that was like a light bulb moment for me. I wrote it down. I went home, this before I even knew Debbie. I wrote it down, put it on my fridge, and just like started thinking about that. I wasn't actively going to church at the time, but that one sentence kind of changed my thoughts. I didn't already, a lot of folks in the evangelical side of things, heaven's a destination. That's where you're trying to go. What you do here is kind of a means to an end. And that just kingdom of God being a disposition and not a destination was something that really changed something in my life. So that's where I'm coming at from this sanctuary of the divine. How do I create that? How do I find that disposition within myself, that sanctuary within myself, that quiet place within myself to have the connection with divine? So, let's see. My path now, without putting too many labels on it, I'm basically a interfaith mystic. My path is all about embodiment rather than transcendence. Good, bad, and indifferent. We're here for some reason. Might as well learn while we're going through it. So that's a continuous evolution, continuous changing, growth, opportunities to meet the moment, to meet the guidance of the moment. Kind of like a little dance, Don't know exactly what the dance is, but as I'm going forward, I'm learning along the way, stumbling, and all that good stuff. All right, so before we go into exactly how I create sanctuary in my life, again, I'm not a teacher, so this is just my experience. Your mileage may vary. But large-scale examples I was thinking of for sanctuary, we all can think of these, like wildlife sanctuary, ecological sanctuary, places where plants, animals, whole ecosystems are protected, allowed to flourish in a natural way, National parks, national monuments, state parks. These are areas set aside that we as a community, as a people, set aside because we think it's special. We think it should be preserved for the future folks. Maybe some of us don't think that's as important these days as previously people thought. This is one that's important for these current times. Whole countries, whole states, and whole cities can be sanctuaries. These are safe places. These are safe places for people who are ostracized or discriminated against, those that have somehow found themselves being categorized as the other. Those are all big examples of sanctuary, large-scale examples, I should say. So small-scale examples for me that I was thinking of. Home. It's a sanctuary. You hope it's a sanctuary. Not everybody's home is a sanctuary, but, in my heart of hearts, I hope that everybody's home can be. For me, it's a place of rest for me and my loved ones. It's a nurturing place where we can grow. It's, you don't have so much judgment there. A backyard, it's a place of refuge, a place of sanctuary. I really like gardening, like Joey. It's great. I love just messing around in the ground. We have chickens back there now. That's really a lot of fun. It's a place of safety for us and our pets, for them to grow, for them to live their life, for us to, be recharged, be away from the hustle and bustle of society. Growing up on a farm in Texas, not big in Texas standards, it was 150 acres, pretty big for around here. A barn is something that is a sanctuary. We had a bunch of goats. At one point, I had over 250 goats. Lots of little babies running around. So a barn is a place of sanctuary. It's a place for those small ones to bed down, be away from, the elements, and be away from predators. Also a place for mice and rats to find sanctuary. And they're going about their life too. Something that may be a little closer to all of us is, a workshop or a home studio. That's your sanctuary as well. It's a place you feel comfortable. It's a place you remove yourself from, prying eyes of other people or judgment or things like that. It's a place where you can focus your attention on your intentions and go forward from there. So common themes across that. Places of relative safety. Safety in comparison to maybe the outside world. Places set aside or protected. Places for growth and nurturing. Places of support. But something that's very important, because I was cleaning the basement before we went on our trip, and there's lots of spiders down there. They thought it was a sanctuary. I tried not to kill very many of them, but some of them, were unlucky. So sanctuaries are not utopias. Life processes still go on. They're not heaven on earth, right? If you think about Yosemite or something, wild animals still kill each other. They still die. They still go about their process. Cataclysmic events still happen. Forest fires, earthquakes, volcanoes around here, flash floods. And then, maybe on a more personal level, sometimes the noise and pressures of life from the outside world, whatever that is, compared to your sanctuary, sometimes that seeps through. And sometimes, this breaks that veil of perceived serenity that we have. In your workshop, maybe it's serenity, but your kids are outside and they need you. That voice that says, Mom, my brother's hitting me or whatever, that's gonna pierce that veil and bring you out. So again, sanctuaries are not utopias. So what's divinity? Like I said, lots and lots of definitions, multiple people, everybody here probably has a different definition if we went around the circle. But I was kind of thinking, let's think about some of the bigger mainstream religions. What do they think? Or what do I understand them thinking of divinity? So Abrahamic religions, that's where I came from, so that's where I'm going to start. Divinity is some sort of omnipotent, all-pervading presence in a singular God. It's a creator, sustainer, destroyer, judge, forgiver, all wrapped into one all at the same time. Islam and Judaism, they have a list of names for this, right? There's one single God, but then there's a whole bunch of names that basically points to and explains the different countenances of God, and it connects the folks to the wide array of manifestations of that God. The loving God, the judging God, the one who lifts you up or brings you down if you have too much ego, that kind of thing. So there's a whole bunch of them, but it's still just one God. Christianity is slightly different, but they have the Holy Trinity, right? They have God, which is this big name that this means a lot. But it's this unchanging, unmanifested Godhead. It's something that's all-pervading. And there's Jesus, this earthly human personification, something to make that a little bit more easy to understand or connect with. And then there's this thing called the Holy Spirit, right? And this is like, you've heard God works in mysterious ways. And so that's the mysterious ways. The Holy Spirit's description of this wondrous, pervasive presence of God and how it sustains creation and works in all of creation. So that's Abrahamic religion, or at least my understanding. Hindu spirituality, going a little bit to the east. On first glance, everybody's going to say it looks very, very different. There's thousands of gods in the Hindu pantheon. But to me at least, I don't know about you all, again, your mileage may vary, but to me at least, if you go a little bit below the surface, it's really similar. So you have Brahman, right? This unmanifested, all-pervading Godhead. It's everything. That's Brahman. That's hard to explain. You can't wrap your head around it. You can't put some sort of logic onto it. So what did they do? 99 names of Judaism, or Islam and Judaism. The Hindu folks add, 99's good, let's have a few thousand, right? So, you got to think, where's Hinduism coming from? It's coming from the Indian subcontinent. There's a ton of people over there, and there's a ton of people that have been doing this for thousands of years. So there's thousands of gods. And these are all avatars of the different characteristics of Brahman. Again, if you can't wrap your head around something, how can you be connected to it? So they made these multiple gods, or came up with these multiple gods to help personify this ineffable Godhead Brahman. In the indigenous folks around the world, lots and lots and lots of spiritual paths. These things are thousands of years old again. Lots of them, I'm not going to go touch all of them because we'll be here forever, but lots of them have many gods, and they're linked to nature and the natural processes. So you can think of the river gods, or the mountain gods, or the air, storm gods, and the trees and the plants, even the rocks. That's something that Debbie and I often have conversations about. What is, where do you draw the line with things being awake? And I think rocks also have gods. So basically, these are the gods that are seen as the sustainers and the innate forces behind all of these natural processes and natural things. And so it's a way of explaining everything that we can see and everything that we can experience here on Earth and in the cosmos and everything in between. And so these gods are the things that make everything work, the forces that make everything work together. Bringing that indigenous thought back to America briefly, we have the Native American folks. Obviously, they're not all one tribe with one belief, but there's lots of different tribes of Native Americans that talk about a great spirit that moves in and through all things. Kind of the similar thing of this unmanifested God's unmanifested Brahman. It's an all-pervading presence that's creator, destroyer, sustainer, revivifier, everything, all at once. This is the great spirit that moves in and through all things. Back to the East, briefly. The Taoist. These guys wouldn't probably like me to talk about this being divinity. They probably don't consider the Tao divinity. I'm not Taoist. I dabble in trying to understand what people try to do and treat the way other people believe, so I can see if does that fit my worldview. So the Tao is not technically, some sort of God, but in my eyes, it seems similar to these thoughts, these all-pervading, unmanifested. So this Native American great spirit that moves through all things, the Tao, is an energy that's supposed to be moving through all things. It's the natural way of the universe. It's the way, the yin and the yang that you were talking about. This is the harmony that underpins everything. You have the good and the bad. You have the ups and the downs in life. But in between, there's something that's connecting it all, and that's the Tao. So to me, for this talk at least, or the way this talk is kind of summed up, that to me is another way of thinking of divinity. And then finally, getting away from all the religions, the scientist. I'm an engineer. So I thought, well, what do the scientists say about divinity? They won't say, I guarantee you can ask 100 scientists, very few of them will talk about divinity. What do scientists do? We're talking about like theoretical physicists, cosmologists, astronomy people, that type of thing. What do they do? They make sense of the universe through scientific observation, and they describe these observations through the language of math. That's it. When you get down to it, that type of science is just math. It's math used, applied across the world. I've taken way more math classes than I want to. But it's essentially a language of the existence. So on the cosmic scale, scientists have this set of equations to explain what's happening in the universe, right? Why is it doing certain things that they observe? And these set of equations only make sense whenever they add some variables that they don't understand. These things called dark energy and dark matter. Dark energy is this understanding of why is the universe expanding? Why is it expanding faster and faster and faster? Well, there's something pushing it apart. We don't know what that is, so let's call it dark energy and let's make this variable to plug into our math. And then they also have this thing called dark matter. Why are things being held together? Why is this gravity there where it really shouldn't be? We can't see why everything is holding together. You have on certain instance, everything's pushing apart, expanding faster and faster. But also you have all these humongous beings, structures out there that are actually holding together. And if you look at the planets and the stars and black holes and all that, that's not enough matter to hold it together. That's not enough gravity or matter to make the gravity to hold everything together. So they call that dark matter. And they plug that into the math. And all of a sudden it works. So scientists will tell you they don't have any idea what dark energy and dark matter is. That's the dark part. They're not linguists, but they are brilliant mathematicians. But whenever you plug those variables in there, it works. And it works perfectly. And so that's one of those holy grail type of things is for scientists is what the heck is dark energy and dark matter? Maybe it's divinity. I don't know. Who knows? It's interesting. But to me, it's similar to these ideas, this all-pervading Godhead, this all-pervading great spirit that moves through everything, this all-pervading Tao that is the harmony that holds everything together, that underpins everything. So, not too far away from divinity, in my opinion. And before I go one more thing, I will just stay on the science because it's really fun to me. We've heard about the Big Bang Theory, right? Not the TV show. That's not so great. But the actual Big Bang Theory, that everybody says they understand. There's this theory that no matter, no energy can be created or destroyed. Everything that's out there right now, no matter where you look, is everything that's always been around forever. It's just been changed. That's it. So they long time ago, I don't know who, somebody, a long time ago, they theorized that there was this thing called the Big Bang. If this universe is expanding, at some point or another, 14 some odd billion years ago or something, it goes back to a single point. And then from that point, it popped, it banged, whatever that looked like, had a huge explosion, or maybe it just said, I don't know. But that is supposed to be everything we all know and see as the universe, which is gargantuanly huge. So if you think back, okay, if you rewind the tape, 14.5 billion years, everything's contracting back to a single point. If that's where the bang came from, science calls that the singularity. Again, not linguists, but, to me, a singularity, this single point where everything comes from, maybe that's divinity. So, anyways, those are just some things, some points to think about as you're thinking about sanctuary and divinity. But moving a little bit more personal, and I'm going to wrap it up by the time she told me to. I will get to here shortly to some practices to kind of share with you about what I do in my daily life to create this sanctuary. But first, what's sanctuary for me? We talked about these kind of generalities. Me particularly, my prayer and meditation spaces. That's sanctuary. Nature is definitely sanctuary. I love hiking. I love being in the mountains. I love doing all that. We spent some time on the beach recently. I really enjoyed, even though I wasn't feeling well. I really loved being on the beach underneath the shade of a coconut tree for about a day. So nature's sanctuary. And then I think very, very important for this talk is the inner spaciousness I find in my heart. That is my most important sanctuary. So these are places I can retreat to and get away from the noisy world. I used to think I was anxious or had anxiety, but I do not. I found that out through lots and lots of therapy, that I'm actually just very sensitive. Places that help me, these sanctuaries are places that help me quiet my thoughts and that inner chatter. So again, I'm not actually full of anxiety. I just have a lot going on in my head. And by helping me quiet this inner chatter, these thoughts, it helps me begin to really listen. And what am I listening to? How am I listening? This sanctuary allows me to begin to learn to listen with my heart rather than with my mind or my ego. And finally, this interior spaciousness in particular. This is a place of support that helps me face all of life's possibilities, all these ups and downs of life, everything that we all go through. Divinity for me is this omnipresent, all-pervading presence that is both internal and external all at once. It's everything. It's also an interior breath. We talk about the breath a lot in my path. It's light of awareness, basically a light inside my being that helps me cut through the red tape of my ego, let's say. So it's a combination of sorts of this. Obviously, you guys could probably tell that I like the dark energy, dark matter idea. So it's a combination of that. It's a combination of the Tao. It's a combination of the 99 names of Allah. That's the pretty concise form of what I think it is. But I think something that can help you all think about divinity too. It's the glint in the light of the eye of my lover, or my most trusted friend, during moments of heartfelt intimacy. It's the sunrise that transforms the moment physically in the greater world at the same time that is transforming me emotionally. That's divinity. Very personal. I didn't write this down, but I think I'll share it. Divinity is the wind in the trees that surrounded me on the day we put my grandmother into the ground. She was very close to me, and I was very heartbroken. I went outside behind the church we were at, and I was by myself, surrounded by trees, and the wind in those trees, that's divinity. And the look in my grandmother's eye as she was actively dying with me, that's divinity. All right, so all that as a premise to this, how do I create sanctuary for the divine in my life? 2 words, big words, spiritual practices. That, again, definitions are hard on those because they'll be different for everybody, but a quick, easy definition is continuous efforts of remembrance that bubble under the surface of my experience moment by moment. These are little things that happen all the time. My teacher has a lot of one-liners, but one of his one-liners is do the practice until the practice does you. And that's very true. There's a particular one that I'll talk about later on that I don't sleep all that well often. I often wake up and I do this practice while I'm in those moments. And so now it seems like every time I wake up, I'm just automatically doing this particular practice. So this practice is doing me now. So these practices are like polishing a mirror, cleaning a lampshade. You know, those of you like me that sometimes maybe don't clean your house as often as you should, if you don't do them very often, it's hard work. So these practices are easier if you do them more often. So I've already told you and you can tell that I'm contemplative. So there's lots of focusing on my heart, lots of focusing on my breath in these practices. And through all of this, it's learning to recognize what it feels to be regulated. And I've learned to realize what it feels to be in harmony versus that anxious feeling. I used to think that I actually had anxiety versus feeling dysregulated versus feeling disharmonious. So that's the part of my practice. Whenever I feel those maybe negative ways in my body, oh, I'm not connected anymore. Oh, I'm not in my sanctuary anymore. I need to check back in with my practice. So what are my practices? There's a few three that I will tell you about, and then we'll lead you all on one. Back COVID times, the before times, way back in the day, 5 years ago, I worked for the city of Everett. We all got sent home, like probably all of you all got sent home. I got, here's your stuff. Please keep working, but work from home. So, cool, I'll do that, no problem. I really wanted to stay doing that. They brought me back, but that's okay. But during that, especially that first, say, initial 6 months, the world was upside down. We didn't know what was going on. My work still had to go on, but it was really slow. Construction wasn't happening. Yeah, we were doing engineering analysis, but we didn't need to do it as quick because we weren't going to do any construction anytime soon. Good luck trying to buy, things from India at that time and whatever else that we were trying to buy. 3 years to get a 1 megawatt generator. That was not fun. But during that time, because of all this tumult, I was able to really sink into a morning practice, a morning meditation practice. I mean, there were some mornings I'd be meditating and doing practices and prayers and stuff for like 2 hours. Debbie was like, "Why are you setting your alarm?" I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go sit on the couch while you're sleeping. I'll catch you later at breakfast." So what do? So I still do this now. It's not 2 hours anymore. That felt like a little bit of a gut punch when I had to go back to work. But it is, 30 to 45 minutes. So what do? I go sit on the couch, like this. And I connect with the altar of my heart. That's it. We talk about your body as a temple, talk about different things like that. Well, one of the things you can think about is your heart as an altar. I'm a very visual person, so I actually think of it as an altar. Not unlike that. And so what do? With intention, I clear it of worry. I clear it of the debris of the day, or whatever. I cleared of my anxieties. I cleared of my ego-based assumptions, which that's huge. Ego-based assumptions. Sometimes you think you're important. You think your worldview is the worldview. I'm an engineer. I know. Sometimes I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room. It's not true. That's my ego. So I try to clear that. But in actual physicality, what do? I say, ah. I just, ah. You can, different people use different tones. Use om, ah, ooh, all those different tones. For me, ah seems to resonate in my physical heart. So I stick with that. I use a lot of Arabic terms. There's a lot of ah words in Arabic. It goes well together. So I do that. I intone ah a bit. And then I do some meditation, and then I do some actual practices with words. My practices usually vary. There's a lot of different ones that I do. I've been hanging out with the Sufis for, 8 or 9 years now. So there's lots of practices out there. But they vary. But they usually include something that includes La ilaha illallah. This one, it's an Arabic phrase you've probably all heard here at the sanctuary. Basically, it's defined. One definition is there's no God but God. There's no deity but the God, the one God. I really like one. Michael Douglas mentioned this many years ago, just on passing. There is no reality but the one true reality. I like that. My egotistical need-to-know brain makes up a lot of stories. Those aren't reality, right? Those are my thoughts, but they're not reality. So La ilaha illallah means there is no reality but the one true reality to me. I feel that, and I repeat that. I repeat it. Sometimes there's movement, depends on how you do it. Sometimes I'm whispering it, trying not to wake up Debbie. Sometimes I'm singing it, but I repeat it and repeat it until my mind and my ego is quiet. Sometimes it takes a long time. And I repeat it until my heart and nervous system feel calm. And then I keep going until I just feel full. And that's the time I'm done. Or it's before work and I gotta go, Sometimes I gotta go. But I just keep repeating it. I think that the thing that I really want to get across to you is this nervous system feeling calm. People talk about mindfulness. It's kind of seems a little bit cliche these days. Everybody's got a gazillion books on how to be mindful. There's a couple ways to be mindful. It's something that me and my teacher talked about not too long ago as well. A couple ways of being mindful. It's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing, because if you're mindful, you're going to be pretty calm. Calmness generally means your nervous system is regulated. So, nervous system regulation and mindfulness go together, chicken and the egg. A lot of the books are telling you how to be mindful. Do this practice, do this thing, think this way. Force it. Force mindfulness. And then once you force mindfulness enough, then you're going to be calm. That doesn't work for me. It probably doesn't work for a lot of you either. So I try to go about it the other way now. And that's going about clearing things out, calming down my nervous system. Vagus nerve, you've all heard about that. The way I'm talking, the ahs and the ohs and the ohms and then different things, all that stuff is helpful creating nervous system regulation by basically toning your vagus nerve. You have these vibrations in your body, and by doing that, you feel better. Just go down the rabbit hole about what the vagus nerve is and how to deal with that, and it'll be interesting, I'm sure, for you. So that's what I try to do, is regulate my nervous system. I know what my regulated nervous system now feels like and what it feels like when I'm dysregulated. And by staying in that spot of nervous system regulation, eventually I become mindful. So that's what I do in the mornings each day, and it prepares me for my personal sanctuary. It cleans out my heart. It allows me to have, by preparing that sanctuary, it allows me to have connection with what I consider divinity. And then I'm ready to go about the day, bring that out to the world, whatever, make the better part of the day that I can. We all know ups and downs of life. You can't stay in that spot. This sanctuary is not utopia. We're not monks sitting on top of a mountain. So going throughout the day, in moments of anxiousness and of feeling anxious and feeling overwhelmed, what do I do at that point? That happens a lot. So how do I return to my sanctuary and my connection with divinity in that moment? I used to be very bad at this. I was definitely the engineer that tried to talk over people whenever I was younger. I try not to do that anymore. So what do I do whenever I feel anxiousness and I feel overwhelmed? I notice the feeling of dysregulation in my body. Again, embodiment. I know what it feels now. So racing thoughts based on my own assumptions, not necessarily the truth. Anxious feelings in my belly and in my heart. Shallow, fast breathing. We all have felt this. And then this is the big one, so my ego ruling my actions. So I'm quick to react, I'm quick to talk over people, I'm quick to anger, quick to emotion. This is whenever I know that I'm feeling anxious and I know that I'm feeling overwhelmed. And so whenever I recognize that, which I'm not great at this, but I do my best. When I recognize that, what do? I make an intention to return to sanctuary. I focus on my physical heart. That's where my sanctuary is for me. I start taking slower, deep breaths. It's helpful if you're by yourself. You can do this in the middle of traffic or on the elevator. For me, I'm in lots and lots of meetings, so I have to do that often there. Sometimes they're contentious. So take slow, deep breaths. And in my practice, if I'm by myself, I'll do this out loud. But often I'm not by myself, so I just do it in my thought. But while I'm focusing on my physical heart, while I'm taking these slow, deep breaths, I inhale, and while I inhale, I think of the word salam. You probably have all heard that word, a deep personal peace. So I think the word salam as I'm inhaling. As I'm exhaling, I think the word Hakam. Hakam is one of those 99 names of God. So Hakam, it's a lot of definitions. If you pick up a book about the 99 names of God, each book's going to be slightly different. There's going to be some real deep definitions in there, because Arabic's kind of a mathematical language that has lots of meanings depending on how the letters go together, and so therefore there's lots of meanings to these names. But in general, Hakam means discerning wisdom or discerning understanding. This is akin to seeing from the eye of the heart, kind of seeing through the noise at the surface, right? So whenever I'm feeling anxious and I feel overwhelmed, I want to return to my center, return to my sanctuary, return to my connection. I inhale slowly, salam, peace. I exhale slowly, Hakam, deep understanding. And this is the one that happens while I'm sleeping. This very quickly brings my nervous system back into a regulated state. Very quickly allows me to be more mindful, allows me to be more harmonious in the system, in the moment. And yeah, that's something very powerful to me, at least. Makes my dreams nice too, actually. If I wake up and I find myself doing that whenever I drift back to sleep, I wake back up and it's like, wow, that dream was really nice. so peaceful dreams. So all other times, this is the last thing I'll do before I do a slight guided meditation with you, or guided practice with you. But the last thing that I would like to bring up to you all is another feeling of being knocked out of that sanctuary. And this is when you feel like self-doubt, or when you feel less than, or you feel not valued, or you feel ostracized in some way. These are not nice feelings, right? They knock you right off your center. So what do I do within this moment? Same idea. Notice that feeling. This one's a little more important to me, though, is whenever I do notice that feeling, I tell myself internally that that's okay. Because growing up, the way I grew up, there was a lot of judgment that was taught to me. Judge yourself, judge others. You're not good unless you do this or that. So whenever I feel this less than, not valued, self-doubt type of thing, I recognize it and I say, it's okay. That's fine. No big deal. And then I tell myself I don't have to believe what others say or think. And if it's self-doubt, I also don't have to believe what I think. That's ego. You don't have to believe what your ego says. So I do that, and I make an intention to return to sanctuary. Again, I connect with my heart and my breath. I slow the breathing down. And this one's slightly different. Same idea, same formula. While I'm inhaling, I'm thinking something. When I'm exhaling, I'm thinking something. This time, again, I'm feeling less doubt, or I'm feeling self-doubt, less than not valued, those type of things. So this time, whenever I inhale Ya Nur. Nur, like our friend over here, is light, divine light. It's the light of awareness. So I inhale the divine light. I physically think of light going into my heart and, lighting up my spaciousness there. And then whenever I exhale, I think another divine name, Ya Alim. Alim's a different knowledge. This one's like an omniscient knowledge. This one's like a total knowledge beyond questioning. There's lots of different types of knowledge. This one is like the knowledge. So I something I think will bring this one home is, again, I told you about we have chickens. Alim is how the chickens know that they're chickens. They don't think they're humans. We think we're this and that and the other. We have this whole line of stories that we tell ourselves. Chickens don't do that. They're chickens. They just want to be chickens. And so that's their knowledge, their alim. So whenever I'm feeling less than, not valued, self-doubt, that kind of thing, I literally connect with my breath and my heart, inhale, light, thinking Ya Nur, exhale, Ya Alim, knowing that I am the light. And the light is literally me. And that rekindles my light and reconnects me with the divine. And then therefore I can once again walk forward, shining that light. Because if I've been doing my practices, then my mirror is clean and my lampshade is clean, so others can see the light too. Because that is just as important. Sanctuary for me, hopefully can be sanctuary for you. Why else are we here? So, that's all I have to talk about. It's a whole lot of stuff. But that's where I come from. That's what sanctuary for the divine means to me. And so, perfectly right on time. I will guide you all with a short repetition, about 33 or so, of a mantra of La ilaha illallah. Again, this is, there's no God but God. There's no divinity or there's no deity but God. There's no reality but the one true reality. So yeah, we'll do that, and then Sally Jo will say what she has to say.
Why don't you say the words real slowly so people
Okay.
can hear them again?
Again, lots of A's, some A's. So La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. So if you want to just relax, maybe close your eyes, get comfortable. I think, like Jamal does, I think it would be best if we would all say one or two ahs. And whenever you do it, think about your heart, your physical heart, and feel that vibration of the ah sound. See where it lands in your heart. Let's do one more. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Zach, for that beautiful sharing, your personal story and your beautiful practice. I'm sure we all benefited from. I love the thing about dark matter. I'm going to be thinking about that one a lot. Anyway, I told my plan today was to kind of piggyback onto what Zach was talking about. And again, we're leaving everybody here in this room up to defining divinity for themselves. There's so many different ways to define it that, and Zach gave us a beautiful array of possibilities. So for me, I wanted to focus on this other piece, the part of how do we stay connected to that divinity, whatever it means to us, that energy. How do we stay connected to that during the day? And Zach, you gave us some beautiful examples, so I thought I'd give some other examples from my point of view, because everybody really, it's each of our individual jobs to find our own ways to stay connected. And I want to make a point that I think there are an infinite number of ways to connect with divinity. And I keep reminding myself of that. When I was in my graduate program, and I wasn't in a place in my life where I thought much about spirituality at the time, although I had been through other periods in my life when I did. But I studied the work of a gentleman, a psychologist called Csikszentmihalyi. I think he was from, Eastern Europe. And he had a concept called flow that he wrote about. And I got really into that. It really captured me. And I did research on it. I wrote a paper on it. And I started using it in my teaching, because I was a teacher when I was already a seasoned teacher when I got my master's degree at Antioch. And I used this idea of flow right away with my students, because I knew we had all experienced it. If you've ever, flow, everybody's experienced flow. It's a time when in your life you're engaged in some kind of an activity and time stops. You're in that activity for some amount of time, but when you finish, you can't believe an hour has passed or 2 hours has passed. You've been totally absorbed in it. That's called flow. It can happen to a person who's climbing a mountain, a person who's swimming, a person who's studying a math problem, anything. It can happen anytime. But the criteria for it that this scientist, this psychologist determined for him, and I thought it was pretty true for me too, it's a time when you're highly concentrated, you're doing something that is just the exact amount, right amount of challenge for you. And that that's going to bring you into that sense of timelessness. You're going to be absorbed in it. Those are the three criteria, if I remember correctly. And I would do this with my classes because once in a while, let's say I'd be teaching a math class and we'd be very involved in an activity, and suddenly the bell would ring and everybody would go like this, like, what, huh? The class is over, and that's when I knew we had all been in flow, and that was my goal every day. I didn't achieve that every day, but I taught the class about it so they would recognize it. I say, see guys, that's flow. We were in group flow right then. We were all in flow because the bell rang and we were all startled by it instead of watching for it and waiting for it and tapping our foot and hoping it would ring in a minute, right? So I use that in my personal life, and it's the way I try to gauge whether any activity I'm involved in then goes from being an activity, like maybe I'm cooking dinner, or to a state of flow or a state of what some people call mindfulness. For me, this is my definition of mindfulness. And now, more and more, it's becoming my idea of a spiritual practice. So if I can start my prayers in the morning, and I get into my prayers in such a deep way that when there's a school, I live across the street from a school, and when a bell goes off, right around 8 o'clock, a bell goes off, and that's when I know it's time for me to go get my breakfast, right? When that bell goes off and surprises me, I'm like, oh, I've been doing this for over a half an hour, then I know that I've been in flow. I've been doing my spiritual practice properly because my mind hasn't been racing off. Like you were saying, Zach, your mind hasn't been racing off onto other things. And even when I'm cooking, you use techniques to make something helpful to become that absorbed in it, or I have learned some techniques. So let's say I'm cooking dinner, and I know people are coming pretty soon, and I'm trying to get ready with the dinner, and I've got 1,000 thoughts. Don't forget this, don't forget that. But then I say no. And I do something you do, Zach. I say one of those names, or I recite a verse in my mind. And first of all, it keeps me from cutting myself when I'm chopping something, which would happen otherwise if my mind is flitting around. But I put love. I think I want to put love into this food. This food, I'm going to be serving it to myself and others. And so I get into a mindful state of reaching in with my connecting with divinity. And then I calm down, and somehow the time passes and the meal gets cooked. You know what I mean? I'm not worrying about it anymore. So to me, then it becomes a spiritual practice. Now, I have two practices I'd like to share briefly, and one of them I'm going to share with you. Well, both of them share with you. One practice I learned to develop in childhood, and I'm going to encourage you all to think back to your own childhood, because I think we all, as children, are closer to divinity than maybe we are as adults in general. I mean, just naturally. And as children, we find these things. Like when I would go in the woods and play, whether it was by myself or with my friends, the whole day would pass by. And I wouldn't know what time it was because I would be so engaged in whether I was building a fort with the friends or just wandering around and looking at the outdoor, the nature. When we're in childhood, we sort of do these things naturally, and a lot of times we're lucky enough that people don't tell us to stop, so we keep at it, right? So one of the things I did as a child, I always liked words. I think I've been into words since I was very young. I come from a big family, and a lot of my brothers, they were always talking around me, so I guess I learned how to talk early. I learned how to read early. But one of the things I loved to do was read poetry. But the poetry for me, I always wondered what it really meant. I liked poetry that had meaning to it. And I was thinking, when I was preparing this, I was thinking back, like, can you remember, Sally Jo, a poem you said as a child? And one actually came to my mind. I couldn't remember the whole thing, but I remembered the first 3 or 4 words, and I typed it into Google, into AI, and the poem came up. I was so surprised. But it turns out it's a famous poem. I didn't know at the time it was famous. It's a poem called If by Rudyard Kipling. That's probably why it came up, right? Because it was famous. I didn't even remember who had written it, but I remembered the first few lines, and I still do. I mean, I had to review them, I'll confess. But the first line was, and I was about 10, 11 years old when I memorized this poem. I had a big book of poetry, big black book of poetry that my parents had given me for Christmas. So I would go through this, I'd open it up and read a poem. It starts out like this. If you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when others doubt you and still make allowance for their doubting too, and make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not get tired of waiting, if you can, let's see, what's the next line? If you can wait and not get tired of waiting, I have my cheat sheet here, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. Now the poem goes on from there, but I kept trying to unload that, unpack that poem. Like, what is this poet talking about? And I would think about it and say it again and again and try to learn from it. Well, I've come back to that practice as an adult, and one of the things I do is go through sacred scriptures, whether it's the Tao Te Ching or the Buddhist scriptures, the sayings of the Buddha, or the Quran, the Holy Quran, and I try to not just memorize the verse, but think about what does it actually mean in my life? How does it relate to me, Sally Joe? And I'd like to recite a very short verse from the Quran that I've been saying a lot to myself lately. And this is hard for me, but I'll even do it in Arabic because you've given me the courage. I've written it, I know, but I haven't memorized. But it's something that I'm nervous about speaking Arabic, but especially when there are people around who actually speak Arabic. But anyway, I'll be brave. And it's very short. It goes like this. Ayuha alladina amanu asbiru wa sabbitu or sabbiru wa rabbitu wa ataku allaha la'alakum tuflihuna. And what it means is, oh, you who have attained to faith, be patient and persevere in patience, and keep your connection, and remain conscious of God, so that you might attain felicity. Okay, Ya ayyuha alladina amanu asbiru wa sabiru wa rabbitu wa attaku allaha la'alakum tuflihuna. And I recite this to myself at times, like when you were talking about, Zach, when you get nervous or anxious or these thoughts come rolling in. For me, sometimes it's first thing in the morning. And I say these lines and I listen to not only what they sound like, but what they mean. Be patient. Persevere in patience. Keep your connection. Remain conscious of God, divinity, whatever you want to call it, and maybe you might be able to attain felicity. So that's a practice I do, and I do it. I can do it any time of the day or night to myself. I do it. I like to whisper it aloud. So like when I'm walking around Green Lake, some of you probably run into me walking around Green Lake, and sometimes people won't even interrupt. They won't even stop me because they'll say, "It looked like you were studying, Sally Jo," or something. I don't have paper in my hand usually. Well, sometimes I do if I'm just learning the verse. But usually I'm just like looking out at the birds or looking out at the water, and I'm saying these words and I'm trying to think what they mean. And people think I'm distracted, which I am. Anyway, it's something I do a lot when I'm alone, and I find it very soothing. The other thing I discovered, that I rediscovered, that was part of my childhood that was so important, was music. Now, some people would say, well, music is beautiful, but is it really a spiritual practice? Well, yes, if you get into flow with it, if you really focus on it deeply. And again, my friends will tell you, if they want me to do something on a special day or night, if I have a concert to go to, that will preempt anything else I might do. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm going to a concert that night, maybe the next night, right? I do go to a lot of musical performances, and I've recently reconnected with my own piano lessons. Now, this piano, some of you know, this is my childhood piano. I got this piano when I was in the high school. I had an old rickety piano before that, but my parents decided to get myself and my sisters and my brother, my family, a piano that we could actually practice on and play on. And this Kauai piano became our family piano. And my mother was a pianist as well. And after she passed away, and my dad, in a couple of years, moved out here, and he brought the piano and presented it to me because my other siblings had already bought other pianos, and I didn't have a grand piano. So I got to have the family piano. And I've recently started taking piano lessons. And I have found the same kind of thing. The concentration it takes, and just the right amount of concentration so that it's not too challenging, but it's definitely takes focus, it takes concentration. And again, when I was in high school, because I didn't go to a church, my parents didn't send me to church, we didn't belong to any church, my piano teacher connected me with a couple of churches who needed people to play hymns during their church service. So I would go and play the piano, and everybody would sing hymns, and I got familiar with Christian hymns that way, and I found them very beautiful. And I later, as an adult, sacred music, I mean, there's so much beautiful sacred choral music that now absolutely transports me into I'd have to say a mystical state when I hear that music, because it not only has meaning in words and sounds, but it transports me to a place where I'm not thinking about anything else but the music. And so I'd like to try to share some music with you. Now, I was practicing this with my grandchildren this week, and they came in the sanctuary. They sat up in 2 chairs, and I said, well, could I play this for you guys, because I have to practice it, because I'm nervous. They said, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous, Grandma. You'll do fine. It's beautiful. And I said, well, you know, that's what my teacher used to tell me. All you're doing when you're playing music is you're sharing the beauty of the music. Just share the beauty, and don't worry about if you make a mistake. And then my older sister always says, well, a robot could play the music without a mistake. A computer, AI, could play the music without a mistake. That's not the point, Sally Jo. And so I know that's not the point. But my granddaughters did give me the okay that they thought this was beautiful, and they were hearing it for the first time. So I'm trusting that it will be okay. This is a piece, actually a very short one, and I'm sorry, we have run over a little bit. There's a short, it's a part, one of 4, it's the first of 4 pieces called 4 Fleeting Pieces. This is the first of the fleeting pieces. So it'll flip by pretty quick. And it's by Clara Schumann, by the way, the wife of Robert Schumann, who was also an extremely accomplished pianist of her day. She was recognized as a great pianist, and all the great musicians like Mendelssohn and Brahms would write pieces for her to play in concert, but she was also a composer, and that didn't go over too well in her day. She did get a few things published because her husband was so famous, and she didn't even have to do it under his name. But most of her work has only been published more recently. This is by Clara Schumann, and you'll see if you think. I think it's beautiful, so we'll see. Proof positive. It's a spiritual practice. And you know what I've told you before about spiritual practices? Does anybody remember? They have to be practiced. Okay, and so I forced myself to try to play this piece, even though I'm still practicing it. And, AI doesn't have to practice, right? He or she, he's got it down. But this is what I also like to share with my grandchildren, because I think that whenever we're in flow or whenever we're doing a spiritual practice, we are evolving into the fullness of our being. And if we can do something that helps beautify the world, helps beautify other people's lives, helps gladden their hearts or lift their spirits, then we have done something good for the world and something good for ourselves. So that is really the idea behind our sharing today and our finding sanctuary in community, because we can do these things individually, which we do, but then when we can share them in community, as we do here at Interfaith Community Sanctuary, I think we all benefit. So thank you for being with us on this sharing today. We do want to take a moment to share our wealth and talk about our upcoming gatherings. So maybe, Zach, you can pass the plate, and I will mention that we have a guest speaker next Sunday, Saqib Rasul, who is a wonderful motivational and spiritual leader. His presentation will be A Call to Transformation, will be in March, and the March theme is Sanctuary for Transformation. So his talk is A Call to Transformation, Faith, Responsibility, and the Power to Change. And then we have our Guiding Council meeting next Sunday after the service, of course. And we have our weekly, our classes that happen every week. This Friday, I know for sure that Suniyai, Isla Ross, is giving her musical sound bath and chanting evening, Friday evening. It goes from, I think, 7 to 9 right here in the sanctuary. That's a special event that happens once a month. And all the other daily classes are listed, and Rich Ater is starting his new class, also March. It's a Saturday in March. I don't remember the exact date. Second Saturday in March, and that will be meeting from 3 to 4:30, I think, here in ICS. I don't know if they'll be upstairs or downstairs. And that's a class that he's just beginning and teaching with one other person about how spiritual leaders have dealt with troubling times in their past, in their experiences, and in their writing. They share how they deal with difficult times in their own countries and environments, when the spiritual teachers had something to say about that. So we'll all enjoy that. And then, does anyone else have a special event coming up or a class they want to mention? Okay, Joey.
Yeah, two things actually. So first is that we will have a members retreat here at Interfaith Community Sanctuary on March 30th after service. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible for folks to attend, and we will be sending out a invitation soon, and we are going to ask for an RSVP because we are going to be offering lunch. And so we want to know how many people to plan for. So look for that coming out probably in the next week or so. George and I are going to meet afterwards and figure out what we're going to send out to y'all. So that's coming. The second thing is that I would like to offer the opportunity for folks to join me every Saturday in March, or I should say the first 4 Saturdays in March, here from 10 until 2-ish to do some deep cleaning. So we'll just have it be easy peasy, drop in if you have some time. I'd love to see your smiling face and your two hands to help me with that project. I hope to just kind of make a sweep through the whole place and do our spring cleaning here. So please join me for that. So for the first 4 Saturdays, in March, 10 to 2-ish. We'll just take it on, get it done.
And I just sent something out on the email list. I'm starting something new called Wild Church. I'm doing it on Saturdays. I'm doing it at Carkeek Park. It'll be just gathering and maybe sing a song, talk a little bit, then having some time where people can sit in nature for a few minutes and then come back and share our experiences. But I sent something out on the first one is going to be March 15th, which is a Saturday at 10 o'clock.
And I want to thank the folks online I know they're doing their donations online. That's very helpful. We've been very grateful for all the people who have been pitching in and helping with our both in the volunteers angle of giving their time and effort and energy, and also their financial support whenever possible. So thanks to you at home who are doing it through the website, and thank you all for contributing here. And we're going to say goodbye to the folks online now, and thank you for being here. We're going to release our ancestors, or maybe we'll wait for a minute to release our ancestors. We may need our ancestors in the next few minutes, and let's release our